Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by OnlineGreatBooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas.
Hello, dear listener. This is Brett, and welcome back to the Online Great Books podcast. Today, Scott and Karl continue their discussion of the 1952 essay, The Great Conversation by Robert Maynard Hutchins. We will pick up not quite where we left off. I wound it back a little over a minute so you can hear that exploration of the aesthetics of books. And the conversation progresses all the way into the question of whether or not we should have a one-world government. Will Hutchins convince Scott and Karl that this is the way to go? You have no idea what's going to happen in the next hour. Please remember to visit OnlineGreatBooks.com to get on the mailing list. And also, please don't forget about all the small things you can do to help the Online Great Books podcast, like leaving a rating and a review on iTunes. That's always greatly appreciated. All right, thank you again for listening. Here we go.
Books need to look good, and I have definite ideas on how they should look.
They need to have more margin on the page than print.
Yep. And you don't want to have any space between the lines. And there's an optimal width, which is probably 3.5 inches, that your eye can easily scan over the one line and back to the next without having to go all the way across the page. So the way you could figure this out, so go get yourself a book published, say, in 1907. Harriet Beecher Stowe or something. I don't know, just some book. Just grab it. You don't have to read it. You just have to grab it, okay? And open it up and look at how beautiful the typesetting is. When a craftsman who could read backwards set those letters as an artist to make a beautiful book. That's what books ought to look like.
Yeah.
It needs a serif font. Sans serif is no good. That's weird to me. So serifs, I'm sorry, we're going to take a little tangent here, audience. The serifs are those little bends on the ends of the letter. So if you look at Times New Roman, which is an imitation of the capital letters that were used on the monuments in Rome. So if you go to Rome, if you go to the Pantheon, and it says Augustus built this, or whoever built it, that's in Times Old Roman. Well, you need to carve that out of the stone, and you need to get your chisel into the stone before you can go across and make the cross line. The serif marks are the chisel's entry points. It's an artifact of having to carve letters out of stone. But it seems to make it more readable. Arial, sans serif fonts, they're not as good.
It gives us information. You know, the serifs let you know that's a lowercase L and not an uppercase I. You know, it tells us stuff. It tells us stuff, and it's important. Yeah, so the great books of the Western world. The font is fine. The font is fine, but the setting and binding is not my favorite.
Well, and you're probably not going to take it to the beach. For me, it's a great place to get reading done. Is to go sit by the water and my kids go play and I read a portable book.
Karl, page 22, XXII. He's going on about their inclusion of scientific works that have supposedly been shown to be outdated. This is an interesting problem. We don't read hardly any scientific works at Online Great Books.
Not in the main program.
We do have people that work on arithmetic, calculus, geometry. We've had some folks who have worked on Hippocrates and some others. We don't do it because, frankly, I believe, I don't know this. I'll throw this to you, and you let me know what you think, Karl. I think that leading a seminar on those works would be a different skill than leading a seminar on the philosophical or imaginative works. And it seems to me like staffing those seminars would be quite a bit more difficult, staffing them with, seminar leaders.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how we would do it.
Yeah.
I haven't done the geometry one. I need to, but, infinity pile. when I sat in at a seminar at Thomas Aquinas College and saw them doing geometry, the tutor would just sit there and he would say, all right, Sally, go do proof 14 on the board.
Demonstrate.
Yeah, and she would go and do it, and then she didn't bring the book up, but she had to reproduce it, and then the students would help her out or comment, and
Yeah, she had to reproduce it.
that's kind of hard to do in a Zoom meeting.
Emmett runs our Euclid sessions and does a good job of it. But having to go up there and reproduce the demonstration by memory, you really can't memorize it. I mean, you could. I mean, certain people have certain kinds of minds that would allow them to memorize those things. But what you really have to do is learn how you came upon it. You have to conform your mind to his method, which is a glorious thing. And I think that's the point of reading these scientific things. It's not like, oh, Galen is wrong about the humors in circulation. It doesn't really work that way. It's about learning about his ways of looking at the world and his investigative methods and his ways of communicating his findings. There's a huge amount of value in that. And also, hot take, most of these guys weren't wrong. Qualitatively.
Yeah, I think there's real value in it. I just don't know that we can, just managing it with what we do as an online service. In the main trunk that we have people go through, it would be tricky to do. I have read, I think, 5 pages of the Principia. I have a copy. One of these days I will read that thing. But even the 5 pages that I read was glorious to me. So just knowing that the way Newton thought of momentum, just 3 words changed everything for me. It's the quantity of motion. Mass times velocity is the quantity of motion. And then Newton's laws make more sense. So force is that which adds to the quantity of motion or changes it.
Yeah, it's pretty glorious. Yeah, reading Newton in that way is good. But if you're like, I'm going to learn calculus from Newton, boy, it's tough. You get to his fluxions and like the notations that he used, they're not the ones that we use. Like if you take calculus, Calc 1 and 2 at your local college or whatever, it's not the same notations. And frankly, I don't think they're very good yet. Like he's clearly a genius, but the notations aren't as intuitive. And then I have to unlearn the ones I learned before. It's really tough, but yeah, it is valuable.
Well, calculus isn't real anyway.
No, it's not. Infinity's bull and fluxions are garbage. And it's good. I welcome the weirding and the great simplification. Point out some more good tidbits, Karl.
So he says page 1, we're now in Roman numerals, about Western civilization. No other civilization can claim that its defining characteristic is a dialogue of this sort. A dialogue with itself is what he means. I think that's right. I think that is maybe the great benefit and also the great flaw of Western civilization, that it keeps eating itself. It's the serpent eating its own tail and contradicting itself. Even in the Iliad, when Achilles and Priam are meeting at the end, spoiler, they're weeping together. Achilles has killed his son, and Priam and Achilles. It's a great moment. You should read it. But Achilles says the gods deal out woes to us humans, some good, some bad. They never suffer themselves. He's mad at the gods. And if you read the book, you're kind of mad at the gods too. So even from the beginning, and Homer's pretty much the beginning. There's some older stuff, but Homer's pretty much the beginning.
He's the beginning.
Well, there's Gilgamesh, which is fantastic, but nobody read it.
No, nobody read it, and I mean, I could go on, but it's one of those arguments about the canon. Homer's the one. Plato's not talking about Gilgamesh.
And so it starts, yeah, it starts with self-correction. I think that's right. I don't know Chinese culture from the inside, but I don't think they do that as much.
No. The problem with self-correction, though, I don't know that it's actually... Wait a minute. It was self-corrective up to a point, and then it just became a pursuit of intellectual novelty. What more are you going to say about metaphysics than what Aristotle says? In my opinion, unless you want to just get crazy and get novel and just write something and make something up to get published, there's not a whole lot more to say about it.
Well, you can reject it.
You can reject it, but why would you do that? I mean, I've heard some rational, quote unquote, rational rejections. You know, there are people that reject the law of identity, say it's tautological and can't be true. Well, what else are you going to tell me about the thinginess of things that's not tautological? Like, you know, axioms are often tautological. Like, what are you going to do about that? So what they end up doing is they reject axioms altogether, and Yahtzee, now you're postmodern. You know, so, you know, you may reject him, but it leaves you with nothing. And people, you know, like Cool Hand Luke. Sometimes nothing's a cool hand, I guess. I don't know.
The best way to do this is found in Nietzschean vitalism. If you're going to reject metaphysics, you're going to end up out in the void. Now what are you going to do?
It's all will to power, you know, at that point, which is fine.
Yeah.
That's actually valid as opposed to just being completely postmodern about it.
Well, you know my affection for him. He at least knows what he's doing. Somebody like Hume, maybe not.
I spent some time with Hume in the late fall. I mean, not the fall of the Americas, but like the autumn of last year. And I was just stunned by how fucking stupid it was. I couldn't be generous. I'm like, why is this getting published? You know, so it really bothered me, this great conversation. It
did fall stillborn from the press, he said.
Good. It should have.
I kind of like him. I think he's funny.
He rejects cause and effect. He should be composted. That's the end of it.
Or he points out that you do not perceive cause and effect. And that's true enough. You infer it. It's an induction.
But Aristotle treats of that problem, though.
Mm-hmm. Well, he waves his hand at it and says somehow humans are such that we do this.
That's the only thing that can properly be said about it. Everything else is rubbish.
Yeah. I still kind of like him. The dialogues on religion are interesting. I think it's funny that he was a kind man personally, and he tried to take care of Rousseau, but he couldn't stand him and eventually had to kick him out. I like that he's self-aware enough to say things like, this is all perfectly fine when we're in the billiard room playing philosopher, but when you step out your door, there's cause and effect. I like his personality.
Well,
you know, and I think that distinction between is and ought is an important thing to realize, that mere facts don't tell you what to do. Anybody who says the science tells us this is what to do that's stupid. You need to go read that bit of Hume and realize that the science does not tell you anything about how to live.
Aristotle tells us about
not
that.
Not a single
too.
thing.
The sense data doesn't tell you what to do.
So everything good is from Aristotle. That's what I'm getting.
That's right.
You're so wrong. Everything good is from Plato.
Plato, hey, listen. We need to do a show about Plato. Not even talk about the books, just talk about him. But, you know, you said that this Western tradition is a self-correcting thing, and I think it was for a time. And I don't think it is any longer. I think it's become, you know, several hundred years ago, it became destructive of itself. I like the Hume is-ought distinction. I like his funny lines about, well, what does it tell us? You know, does it tell us what to do on Tuesday at 4 p.m.? You know, I like those kinds of things that Hume would bring up. But
well, that's Kierkegaard. But
the billiard thing made me think of that. The philosophers in the billiard room. But it's mostly destructive, in my opinion. If we're going to have Aquinas in the canon and Hume, what are we doing? Like, if there is such a thing as true, one of them is more truthier than the other. Why are we reading the less truthy one? What are we doing with this? Like, does Hutchins, does the quote-unquote great conversation actually hold that there's such a thing as a capital T truth? Or is it all performative?
See how we're self-correcting ourselves right here? I think he's right about the reflexive, self-corrective nature of the Western culture. He doesn't quite see that it's a worm in the apple. Nietzsche says somewhere it's our love of truth that destroyed us. or that destroys, well, he thought Christianity destroys itself by its adhesion to the truth. What is this thing, the West? What does it believe? I don't know that I could, since the fall of Christendom, I don't know that you can really say it. Oh, after 1600 or so, it starts to become more and more skeptical, and the reason you would read Hume and these later people, and the best of the later people, I think, are seeing the evacuation of meaning and attempting to put something back there. And so you can do it creatively, or you can do it in a reactionary way. So the best modern philosophers are either creative or reactionary,
right.
You know? Let's go back to Thomas Aquinas, or let's find a new way. Heidegger says, only a God can save us. If only he could find one. He knows he needs one. It is a problem. It is a problem. And you would read the new stuff to see where you've gone wrong, maybe. You've done it. You've read all the new stuff, and your reaction to it is, I'm going to stick with Aquinas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe other people need to go down the road and see that they're not leading to good places in order to realize where they need to go back to.
Well, I understand that. Like, to censor or withhold the bad ideas. I mean, and this is a Western thing, or it used to be. Is probably not a good idea. People need to be able to look at those things and consider them and choose the good and the true on their own. Well, hey, wow, yeah, maybe you need to read some Hume to fall more deeply in love with Aristotle's metaphysics, Karl. But Hutchins thinks that the truth is to be had in seeing the conversation. Like, the truth for Hutchins, I think, is the process, not the context, not the contents of the books. It's the process.
Let me read from page 5. See, it is an hour and a half in, and we're on page 5.
If we can make this 8 parts.
This is why it's an infinity pile.
If we can make this 8 parts, I may get the Silmarillion done.
I learned something, by the way, that Numenor is real. We just call it Atlantis. So it's true history that you're reading when you read the Silmarillion.
I think that's probably right. What is history, Karl?
The original word means the researches. I don't know, stuff you ought to believe. Page 5. This Western devotion to the liberal arts and liberal education must have been, there's a lot hidden in there, must have been largely responsible for the emergence of democracy as an ideal. The democratic ideal is equal opportunity for full human development, and since the liberal arts are the basic means of such development, devotion to democracy naturally results from devotion to them. I wrote my note, this is ahistorical, which is not to say democracy is a bad thing. Reader, you figure it out, or listener, you figure it out for yourself. But the idea that studying the liberal arts is going to make you into a Democrat, I don't see it happening.
Historically, the people that did this were aristocratic. This is an aristocratic activity. It's an elitist activity. It just so happens that the books are like dirt cheap, and you can get them at archive.org for free. Almost everybody knows phonics. Like, we can get on it, but I'm not saying you can't do it. But historically, this was an elitist and an aristocratic activity.
And he's writing in a non-democracy. In fact, he's writing in the United States, which is theoretically not a democracy. And the reason it's not a democracy, originally, go read your Constitution, that old thing. Originally, you did not vote for the president. That was on purpose from people who had a pretty good liberal arts education. Probably heavier on the Romans than we do, but...
Some aristocrats, huh?
Yeah, so the founding fathers of this nation did not see democracy as an ideal. He's making something up there, or he's just not seeing it.
Well, democracy doesn't even mean what it used to mean. People mess with these words, too. Like, what does it even mean now? Our democracy, it's not who we are, Karl. Like, what are they even talking about? What does it even mean? What is all that slippery shit?
No, it means democracy means the dominant party gets what it wants. And then that's democracy. And when they don't get what they want, then that's fascism.
Oh, I see. Well, that's which one is who we are? I forget sometimes.
Monarchist?
Oh, okay. So I was saying,
I don't know what I am.
I was saying that this activity was an aristocratic activity. Which comes first? The aristocrat has the leisure in a pre-industrial society to do this, and then they do it, or something like that. Or do they become aristocratic because they've read the Republic? They start to understand things that other people don't understand, and then that gives them a fulcrum upon which to build and do great aristocratic things. Does it make them nobler in spirit?
I believe so, yes. Yeah, I think so. And here, aristocracy is kind of a bad word. It's like oligarch in English. I don't mean snooty British aristocrat. I mean aristos means the best.
Like Aristotle?
Sure.
I think that's Greek for the best dude, right?
Yeah, he's one of the best. He's so good. But you, dear listener, I'm not blowing smoke. You are of the aristoi because you listen to us and you desire to be better. If there are great thoughts to be thunk, you're going to do it.
Oh, Karl Shoot on the podcast just said that listening to our podcast will make you an aristocrat.
No, I said if you listen to it, you're already an aristocrat.
Yeah, I think that's true.
No, you're not an aristocrat until you rule, but you can be aristoi. You can be of the best. You might never gain power.
Or the colonial, I'm going to call them aristocrats. Jefferson, Monroe, Adams, Franklin. Were these people ruling aristocrats or just noble by nature and aristocratic by nature without having the rule?
I think they would not have gotten the rulership such as they had they not been the sorts of people they were. Franklin is a great example. He was dirt poor and educated himself because he thought that there were great things to be done, great things to be thought, and he did it.
Yeah, he's glorious. I think they were ruling an aristocracy. You can go see how many people actually backed the revolutions of 10, 12, 13% of people, the number of people that had the voting franchise, so on. They were a ruling aristocracy.
Let's see. More tasty chunks. Well, there's one that I want to get, but I'm not going to be able to find it. I have to go to our Slack because I posted it there. I was muckraking. and it got the people I thought it would get. Where is this? It's in our favorite quotes section where people post favorite quotes. People are posting Aristotle and John Adams and me, Robert Hutchins. I don't know what page this is on. If the people are incapable of achieving the education that responsible democratic citizenship demands, then democracy is doomed. Aristotle rightly condemned the mass of mankind to natural slavery, and the sooner we set about reversing the trend toward democracy, the better it will be for the world. That's what Hutchins said.
Mm.
So he thinks the stakes are high, that if this great books project fails, if we cannot educate the people to the extent that they need to be educated in order to be responsible citizens in a democracy, then democracy is doomed.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's not the conclusion he wants you to reach.
I've read my Plato, and gosh, she's wonderful, So, I don't know, maybe 2015, 2016, we see the rise of the social justice warrior. And they're marching and have their signs where they're calling for social justice. And I've read my Plato. And the only thing I can say is, what is justice? These people haven't asked that question. Now, if I asked it, they would have an answer. Almost everybody Socrates asks a question has an answer. And then he just tears it to pieces and stuffs it up their nose. I mean, so you could tell one of these people, you could ask one of these people, social justice warrior. Let's see. Justice. Okay, so what is justice? And they would tell you equality, maybe. equity, maybe something. I don't know. They would have an answer, but it's not a real answer. It's not an answer that bears scrutiny.
No, they have learned. They have learned from Plato that this is the wrong approach. When Socrates approaches you, you do not answer the question.
You throw a brick at their head.
You get your people together. You throw a brick at them, or you just shout them down, right, and you don't give them a place to talk.
Okay. So if the girl with the red hair and the irony glasses does that when you ask her, well, we can still, I mean, this is where the great conversation thing works. Like if you participate in it and you see it modeled and you see cell phone footage, is it footage now since there's no film? If you see cell phone video on Twitter of these people, then the first thing you should say is, wait a minute. Social justice, like what is justice? You don't even have to ask it of that person. You know, so participating in this great conversation thing or watching it gives us that BS detector. And it would be nice if more people who voted had that BS detector. You know, having this kind of an education gives, you know, any kind of government a better chance. You know, the idea that democracy is the one is just ridiculous. I mean, it's just, he doesn't show his work, probably can't. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
But what kind of government would suffer with a liberally educated proletariat? None. It would be for the good of every single kind of government that there could possibly be. Even a malicious tyranny would benefit from it.
Yeah. Well, and whoever the people are in charge in whatever form of government, for them to have considered what exactly they mean by justice, this is a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. But Hutchins' faith, religious faith, that putting great books in the hands of the many, well, that it's a precondition for democracy and that it's actually possible. You know, good luck. He didn't learn from the example of Socrates, was made to drink poison, which is one of my favorite lines. McIntyre said somewhere that we know that people don't care about philosophers anymore because they don't make us drink poison. Let's see. He thinks mechanization is going to make us able to be greater than the Greeks. That's on page 23. I'm never going to get through this thing.
The Greeks.
The Greeks, yeah. I can go to the end.
Let's do it. Screw it.
I can go to the world government stuff. There's much in this essay that is of use. That is probably true and good.
For sure.
But then there's that thing that he's got. That blind spot, that it all has to serve his progressive liberal democracy. Which maybe it does. I don't think it does, but maybe it does. But that's not a reason to read it. You know what? I'm going to echo Soloviev here. What do I care for a liberal progressive democracy?
Yeah, I mean,
you
really.
know, why should I care? But I might care about reading glorious things that bring me closer to the divine. You know, and even if you don't think there is a divine, you can still get closer to it by ascending in your intellectual activity. You're getting closer to whatever. Okay?
Page 23, what yummy bit on there do you have? The substitution of machines for...
Do I have something on 23? I went to 34.
Well, I still like this. This is just the mid-century mindset here. Page 23. The substitution of machines for slaves gives us an opportunity to build a civilization as glorious as that of the Greeks, and far more lasting because far more just. I do not concede that torpor of mind is the natural and normal condition of the mass of mankind, or that these people are necessarily incapable of relishing or bearing a part in any rational conversation, or of conceiving generous, noble, and tender sentiments, or of forming just judgments concerning the affairs of private and public life. I agree with the last piece of that. I don't believe that people are largely incapable of rational conversation or relishing or bearing any part of that, or, you know, whatever. But the torpor of mind is, in fact, the natural state of man.
Yeah, there's an overestimate here, I think, of the power of rationality. I wish it were more, well, maybe. I wish it were more powerful than it is, but people are not moved very much by Socratic dialogue and appeals to reason. They're moved by slogans.
Of course.
And naming an enemy, demonizing the enemy. Go read Rules for Radicals.
Idiot Ben Shapiro is like, facts don't care about your feelings. Feelings don't give a fuck about your facts, Ben. Your little hat, like, it doesn't matter. You can't convince, 3% of the people in the world with the facts. They don't care.
Yeah, all those videos back in 2016 when the internet was still a little bit fun of, so-and-so owning the libs.
They don't care.
In a debate, okay, you win a debate, you lose the person. Nerds believe in the power of debate. I like debate. I can win debates. I have won debates where I have completely established my position, and it was conceded to me that I completely established my position and destroyed the opponent, and the opponent says, well, I still don't believe you.
I have had the same thing happen. I had it happen in my home book group last fall. I think I've told the story on here. I talk about Aquinas and Boethius's proof for the nature of evil. The guy conceded that every premise was true, that they all fit together properly, that he agreed with the conclusion, and he said, yeah, but still, I ain't buying it.
Right.
What do you do with that?
There's something else going on. The will is more important than the intellect. If your will is defective, it doesn't matter what the intellect says. And the will is what aims you at the good.
And these machines that he mentions on 23, which now aren't necessarily gears and sprockets, but are often algorithms and softwares and color palettes and flashing lights, when those machines are aimed at changing your will by screwing with your dopamine and your so on, you can't trust that you can even manipulate the will of these people with your rhetoric. The rationality won't work, the appeal to rationality won't work, and then one man's appeal to their will probably won't work either.
Yeah, that's a good point. So what about you, our listener? Are you actually rational?
No.
Or how can you become more so? Let's put it a different way. How can you purify the will so that you can be more rational?
Well, is rationality even a good tool? Like, you've got a baby in front of you.
Sure. I'll give you an example. It might be, in fact, that bad things are coming down the pike for us, civilizationally. Okay? It might be that the great mass of human beings are not able to see it because they don't want to see it, because it's unthinkable, because it's uncomfortable, because it makes them feel icky that they might not actually be able to get food in the future, or spend money freely because all money's digital or whatever. They don't want to see the danger, and so they don't see it. And so they're not being rational. And perhaps that's also the case for me. So I think the thing that causes that are defects of the will. So how do you purify the will so that you can think better about the good? How's that?
Sure. Yes. But rationality is just not the tool for everything, though. You've got a baby in front of you that has a problem.
No. You have to love the right things.
The baby has an earache. You might use your rationality to diagnose the ear infection or whatever, but that's not the only thing the baby needs. I think in most interactions, they're small scale and rationality is secondary. Dealing with friends and family. And then there's the whole spiritual thing. I think it's like book 4 of Summa Contra Gentiles. He's like, rationality will get you so far, but there are these other matters that are real and are inaccessible to rationality.
Well, and if your will is wrong, you're going to use your reason for bad things anyway.
To deny all extra rational things, to deny all of them.
Yeah. So I haven't done this. I haven't done this to the degree that, no, I have done it. Disengaging from those things in the world that are manipulating your emotions and your will is a necessary thing to do, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm embarrassed to tell you, dear listener, of the amount of time I spent on professional and college football in my life. and allowing them to manipulate me and make me care about people that don't care about me, and having my disposition ruined because the Chicago Bears couldn't win a game. Stupid. Ridiculous. My will was enslaved by propaganda designed to enslave me.
These machines he talks about on 23 have removed a lot of cares from us. And that seems very good, but we're designed to have cares. And if you're not worried about the things that machines take care of, you'll invent something to worry about, like the win-loss record of the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
I have made a radical change or two in my life in the last 4 or 5 years, and I can see that my cares were often trivial and of manufacture. I'm sure that's still true, at least to some degree, but less so now than it was 5 years ago. We're just far removed from reality, such that our cares have to be unreal as well. But the weirding and the simplification is underway, and we will have more metaphysical certainty among those of us who make it.
I hope so. Should we go to the one world government stuff?
Yeah.
At the very end.
So ridiculous. Oh my God. He does deuce on experimental science quite a bit, which I always enjoy. Never forget that piece. That's good. He says on 57, we know that there is no defense against the most destructive of modern weapons. Both the victor and the defeated will lose the next war. All the factors that formerly protected this country, geographical isolation, industrial strength, and military power, are now obsolete. We know that the anarchy of competing sovereign states, that's not true. We know that the anarchy of competing sovereign states must lead to war sooner or later. And therefore, we must have a world law enforced by a world organization, which must be attained through world cooperation and community.
I don't think the conclusion follows. The hidden premise is, well, we know the anarchy of competing sovereign states must lead to war sooner or later. Yeah, it does. And it will. Therefore, we must have world law enforced by a world... Enforced. See, that's the word.
Yeah, who does that?
Who does the enforcing? Pope Francis says similar things in his Laudato Si, his document on the environment. Says nice, pretty things about plants and trees and stuff, and then says, and the way to save it is world government. You're like, who's going to be in charge of this? How is it going? How do you get world government, especially in a book, Robert, where you're talking about the glories of democracy? How will this happen?
It's just crazy, man.
It will happen if somebody imposes enough force to create a worldwide empire, but it will be done through force. It will not be done through selling great books.
No. It will not be through cooperation and community. There cannot be cooperation and community among nations. It can't be. It's impossible. It's ahistorical, Karl would say.
Yeah, there's a lot in this that's ahistorical. Furthermore, the idea that it would come as a consequence of liberal arts study, well, that's not the reason I read the books anyway, but that's not what happens. You get people who are motivated by ideas of liberal democracy, sure, from reading these books. You also get guys that are not, that reject it completely and go absolutely the other way, and they all read the same books.
Because of the current political environs, I see more tater-pilled monarchists come out of it than anything else.
Well, they're all monarchists until they get a monarch.
Right.
And then we'll see.
But that's why you have to keep reading the books.
Yeah. I don't like tater pill. I like potato pill.
You would.
Because it has two p sounds in it. It's alliterative. It's more poetic. Tater pill, it's a barbarism. I don't like it. It's potato pill.
Huh. We'll see which takes.
I know which took. It was the wrong one that took.
That's the wrong one.
So go to page 64. It's kind of in the middle of the page. Montesquieu said, I've never read Montesquieu. Montesquieu said that as the principle of an aristocracy was honor, and the principle of a tyranny was fear, the principle of a democracy was education. Thomas Jefferson took him seriously. Now we discover that a little learning is a dangerous thing. We see now that we need more learning, more real learning for everybody. The republic of learning, that's a nice phrase, is that republic toward which all mere political state republics gravitate, and which they must serve if they are to be true to themselves. No one saw this before yesterday, and we only today are able to begin to measure what we should do about it tomorrow. No one saw this before yesterday, he says.
Has he read The Republic? Has he read Aristotle's Politics? What the fuck? What is he talking about? Gosh.
He's mostly a progressive who got hooked up into great books, I think, and used them as a tool for his progressiveness, and he can't quite see that there might be problems with his starting points. I wrote that literally. I said in my note on this page, did he read Plato?
Plato in The Republic, he just lays it all out. Then the Politics does an even better job in Aristotle's Politics.
He thinks learning leads to peace. And so I wrote down my examples. Not so sure. Alcibiades, Alexander, Caesar, who is more educated than Caesar, Barbarossa. It's not necessarily so.
War and political upheaval doesn't necessarily have anything to do with ignorance.
Right. The way to peace isn't education. I don't know what it is, but it's not that.
These progressive people are just all blank slate types. That all these humans, they're all putty, and if we can just put the right, squeeze that putty just right, then they'll all be fine together. And I am not a blank slate guy. I just don't buy it. There are groups of people have their own interests, and they will war with other groups in order to further or to protect those interests. Period. That's all there is to it. And if you have a one world government, it's going to be full time, 8, 10, 12 fronts all over the globe trying to suppress brush wars. It'll never stop. And it will end up consuming the entire GDP of the world, the entire economic output of the world to try to quell those brush fires. And then it'll fail.
Yeah.
Dumb. And then us that have taken the tater pill, we will rise up.
And those of us who have taken up the potato pill will war with those who have taken up the tater pill.
We'll be ahead
over the crucial matter.
One syllable.
Yes, but our aesthetic will be better. I don't know. It's worth reading the essay. He says a whole lot of, I chuckled a bit in it because I'd seen it happen. The bit on East and West, proposing that we have an Eastern list of great books and add them in. Well, sure, but who's going to do it? And I was present in some colleges when they were attempting to internationalize the curriculum. You can't find anybody to do it.
You know why?
Scott has stepped away from his microphone. He's shouting at me. Do you know why? Why?
Because there aren't anything like these great books in the East. They just don't exist.
Yeah, I don't think they quite do the same thing we do. But even if there were, and so I had a friend who was a scholar of Buddhism and was telling me that there is such a thing as Buddhist scholasticism, that he had gone to learn. Well, he went and learned Japanese to try to study it. But, what am I going to do? Am I going to pull up a compendium of selections from books of the East and suddenly be expert enough to... few persons are less helpful to the world than those educators infatuated with the magic of curriculum changes who think that the teachers or the teachability of any subject they dream of can spring into existence by curricular decree. Yeah, you can't just say we're going to do it. And I'll tell you something more. This might be a delicate topic. So this was after that thing happened that those people did, or maybe did, in 2001. And so there was a great push to incorporate Muslim sources. All right. And I was at a curriculum meeting because we would read the Bible in our core curriculum. Well, why don't we read the Quran? And my friends, they don't want us to read the Quran the way we read the Bible. Because you read the Bible, and what are you going to talk? You're going to read Genesis, and you're going to talk about the three sources, the priestly source, and the Elohist source, and the Yahwist source, and you're going to chop it up, and in our typical 19th century German skeptical way. No, you're not going to do that with that other book.
You mean people don't do exegesis on the Quran?
Not like degenerate Christians do on the Bible.
Well, on top of that, we're not Muslim. Like, why would you do that? It doesn't even make sense. Oh, you need to know about... No, I don't need to know. I don't need to know about it.
You would do it if you... Yeah, you wouldn't be true to the way that the people who read that book if you were to read it in a Western way.
Yeah, there are people that have heard me. They're like, oh, what about Confucius? What about the Pillow Book? What about... Listen, who cares? It's not that those things aren't good, but they don't fit together with this. They don't fit. It's just you being a voyeur, and it's not your stuff. It's not your stuff. Don't read it.
What?
It's not. It's not.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say don't read it, but go ahead and read it if you want.
If you haven't read Plato, Aristotle, and Hobbes, don't read it. You got no business reading it. You don't even know your stuff.
Fair enough.
You don't, and most people haven't. And they're like, oh, what about... And this is what always happens. I get these emails from people, what from the Eastern canon do you read? And I just email them back, nothing. Absolutely zero of it.
There isn't an Eastern canon.
Well, there's not an Eastern canon. It's not to say there aren't important books, the Upanishads, the Book of the Dead, I don't know, Confucius, the Pillow Book, Tale of Genji, whatever. But we don't read them.
Well, there wouldn't be an Eastern canon. There might be a Chinese canon.
Maybe.
There might be a Japanese canon. You go ask them. Go find the best. Well, are there even liberal artists in the sense that there are in the West, in the East? Maybe they're not.
So, in the book, in the chapter 1, or actually I think it's the introduction to this, the Roman numerals in this thing here, he talks about how this is about learning your tradition, figuring out who you are so that you'll know what to do with yourself. These are my words. But he puts forth this idea that if we're gonna vote, we're gonna do all these things, we need to know who we are, how we got there, and then from that we'll know better what to do with ourselves. Well, if I'm not Japanese, how's the Pillow Book and Tale of Genji going to help me do that? That's not who we are, Karl. That's their book. Those are their books. It's not to shit on them. It's just not the same thing.
All right, but wait. Let's say I've done my Hobbes reading for the day. Okay, and it's an evening. It's a warm summer evening. Am I allowed to sit on my porch and crack open a Miller High Life and read Journey to the West, the Chinese classic? Can I do that?
Yes, you can, but you have to understand. I believe that you need to understand that it's not the same activity.
Okay. Because I do that, because I read all this stuff, and then when I'm driving, I'm listening to Space Marine stuff.
All those books I just named, I've read them. But it's not the same. It's not the same. I've got some stamps in my passport. I've been outside of this country, and I've eaten in diners and restaurants in those places. And I've enjoyed the food, and I knew it was good, and the people were kind, and I split. I left. I went home. It is not the same as when I go eat at Dots, and I know the lady behind the counter, and she knows all the people I know. It's not the same thing. Reading those books is not the same thing. Maybe if you'd never read any book, maybe if you're just like a rootless cosmopolitan raised on Call of Duty and Big Bang Theory, and you don't know any of the characters in Dante, you don't know anything about any of this stuff, then maybe it would be the same. Like read Tale of Genji, read Hamlet. Like maybe none of it, maybe it's all completely foreign at this point. Could be.
I think that might be the case for some of our folk that are rootless and don't even know that there's a tradition that they come from.
Eat your avocado toast and read manga from back to front. I don't know. If you're one of those people, you should wipe from back to front too, by the way.
Yes, what would be the manga canon?
I don't know enough about it.
If I had to get Scott Hambrick to read Japanese comic books.
Oh my gosh.
Apparently, so I was reading, somebody connected to that Arcaven project talking about why nobody reads Marvel and DC anymore, because it's all agenda driven, and they're going to flip genders and preferences of characters, not to sell comic books, but to grind an axe. And I was reading, somebody said, this is why I read Japanese manga, comic books, because and I wanted to find out what book it was. I think I even commented on it. So what book is this? And I never got an answer. That there's some Japanese manga that's just about fly fishing.
I read Project X, Nissan Cup Noodle. And it's about this company that developed the noodle cup thing that you see at the grocery store. It's in the styrofoam cup. It has noodles and flavor in it and a little plastic thing on the top. And you peel it back, you put the water in there. You know the one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a manga about how that was developed. I enjoyed it.
I have a manga about statistics.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it was pretty good. The young girl thinks that her father's handsome coworker is going to be the one to teach her statistics, and she begs to be tutored in statistics, but it turns out to be the nerdy sub-junior person who comes in and teaches her.
They fall in love.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think I would enjoy a comic that's not about superheroes saving the planet. It's just about fly fishing.
Aren't we tired of Superman, Spider-Man, Batman anyway? These characters are 70, 80, 90 years old.
I am.
Yeah, who cares? Superman's the most boring character that is ever invented. Never cared about Superman.
Yep, superhero stories need to go away. Or at least there should be new superheroes. I don't want to hear about Batman anymore.
Deadpool.
I watched one of those. It's all right. The kids like them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're appropriate for children.
Yeah.
But to have masses of grown men say, I can't wait till the next Marvel Comics universe movie comes out. No, go read Aeschylus, darn it. That's what you need to do.
Prometheus Bound is so good.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about Hutchins anymore. We got Dewey next time. So we'll talk about that. A Challenge to Liberal Thought is the name of that essay. You can go find that as a PDF. It's out there, guys.
And then?
Karl, I'm having hell with it. The Silmarillion.
Well, okay, so maybe a couple of times after that.
Yeah, we may have to.
You may need to wait till after planning season.
It's getting busy right now. And then I'm just having a hard time sitting down and reading. I don't know if I said this to you before or we turned the mics on. No criticism of the Silmarillion. It's just, I'm just dissipated.
Well, yeah, I get it. The good thing about that when you do get to it is it's episodic. It's not one tale all the way through. Yeah. So you can read bits and pieces of it and come back to it later. It's not like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Good. Drop us a line if you're interested in the Homestead thing. We probably need people to kind of kick us in the pants there to get that done. That might have to be like a once a month show or something like that, but once a month is infinitely more than none a month. Let us know if you're interested in that. Be looking for that Dewey essay and read that, dear listener. I think you'll benefit from reading it. If nothing else, it'll give you something else to be outraged about. I'll tell you, reading Hutchins lately has changed my idea about what we are doing. I think is affecting my approach to it.
Mm-hmm, I've noticed.
Yes. At Online Great Books. And I think for the better, actually. I mean, of course I think it's for the better. I mean, Socrates tells us we all do things, even when we're wrong, in the pursuit of the good. Yeah, Hutchins, he would be dismayed to know he had disabused me of most of his views.
Yeah. If you haven't, go listen to Music and Ideas. I liked doing this show on Russian classical musics. Go listen to that. It'll be a nice backdrop for maybe world events.
Yeah. So funny.
I listened to that Scheherazade thing last night, and it just hits me.
Yeah, it's so good.
So good.
Yeah. Rimsky-Korsakov. Awesome name, too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's all I've got. What else, Karl? Do they need to go get stronger with you?
Oh, sure. Yeah. If you want to get stronger and get coaching, because you probably need to be strong, you don't necessarily need to be world-class champion powerlifter strong, but I think it's going to be useful to you to be stronger. Well, actually, the both of us do this, but you can find me at barbell-logic.com/kshoot. I think that gets to my spot. What we do is online coaching. You do your lifts. You take video of them. You send them to me. I get back to you within 24 hours telling you what you did wrong. I won't yell at you as much as Scott does, but maybe you need Scott because, I'm the nice one. But yeah, I'd love to help you out. It's a lot of fun for me. And the clients do pretty well. And we also tell you what to lift and when to lift it. So you don't have to think. And your physical well-being doesn't need to be an extra stress burden on you. You don't have to say, gosh, I really should work out, but I'm not quite sure what to do. No, we'll tell you what to do. You don't have to think. You just need to go do it.
And you'll get
It'll
jacked.
be great.
And then you'll post physique. It'll be awesome.
Right. And then your Instagram will get more likes and you will get more dopamine hits and Sog will be happy.
That's right. All right. Thank you guys so very much for listening. Go listen to the Music Guy Ideas Show. Go to onlinegreatbooks.com/podcast. Get on that mailing list. Karl has a blog, karlschutt.com, SCHUDT, Karl with a K. And I've got one at scotthamburg.com. Follow us on all those places. So as the weirding and the simplification increases, we'll have more ways of getting in touch with each other. Talk to you soon.